every Sunday at 5 p.m. Studio B for Strange Universe. For Strange Universe.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crypt Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B right here at revolutionradio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the People's War. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious. Makes you so sick and bored that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, all the apparatus to make it stop. Let you go running, go on it, and unless you're saying the machine will be working at all.
Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Revolution Radio.
Tune into Revolution Radio. Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio. Tune into Revolution Radio, Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio.
spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. Travel without movement.
And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. And in here, the results are always positive. Now, we might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. This is the voice of the revolution. And we are streaming to you live with our great friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.org, the #1 listener-supported network in the entire country. We're also streaming to you live on several video platforms on Rumble and YouTube and Twitch, DLive Foxhole, and Truth Refugee. And X. We're streaming on X as well. So I'm so grateful that you are all here. The chat room has been loading up. I just want to see who was first in. I might introduce everybody because you all know who you all are. Gramanon was first in tonight. And Tatanka Dave, JCW408, KO Kelly, East Coast 20, Bayonet is here. That's nice. Nice. What is that? Oh, yeah. Watching Jimmy Dore. I like him. He's funny. Della Meow's here. Gramanon. Boy Dogs 2 is here. Woof woof to you. Let's see. 86 Troll. Karen Draper is here over on YouTube. That's nice. Truth Refugees monitoring. Spartan Roger. Distant Sight over on YouTube. Thanks for representing over there. Let's see here. That's about it. Oh, Alan Holman is here. Okay, now we can get started. Now that's good. Willie Fixit is here, longtime listener. Also responds on social media a lot. You can follow me on social media. I'm on X as Agnew Brooks, because my original account, Brooks Agnew, was banned for life. Yeah, too controversial, I guess. But it's now Agnew Brooks if you want to follow me. What is that? J-Ran Dumb Asshole. Okay. All right. I get it. JJ Nevada's here. And Original Old Dog is here. Woof woof to you, my friend. All right. Wow, what a team. Let's see. Pool dudes over on Foxhole. It's kind of sparse over on Foxhole right now, but it'll fill up. Those guys they're doing a fine job over there. All right, I want to start out tonight talking about something that I discussed on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory on Thursday night. I mentioned a little bit Sunday, but I left this out because I had not seen the change. You know, that's a big audience. It's millions of people. It's one time was the 5th largest AM show in the country. It's not that big anymore, but it's still significant. But needless to say, a lot of people from NASA, JPL, Caltech, they listen to Coast, different hours for different people. And one of the things that I mentioned on Coast to Coast was I was talking about the current state of the space program. And I made a prediction. Well, I actually made an observation after studying the space program for a lot of years. One of the things that I noticed is that they were not ready for Artemis III. Artemis III was represented to be a very complex mission. They were going to launch Starship, put Starship in orbit around the moon. And they were going to launch Orion and put Orion in orbit around the moon. And then Orion and Starship were going to dock. And then the astronauts were going to move from Orion to Starship and then fly Starship to the surface and land it. And the rumor is that there was a whole bunch of equipment on Starship. They were going to robotically deploy it, put it off on the ground to be used on the next mission and the next one after that. Starship can carry a lot of payload, like 100,000 pounds of payload easily. Well, of course, then Starship was going to take off from the moon, redock with Orion. These astronauts were going to move from the Starship back to Orion. Orion was going to come back to Earth and splash down here in the Pacific Ocean. The problem is none of that has been tested. We haven't splashed Orion down with people in it. We haven't docked Orion with the Starship. We damn sure haven't landed Starship enough times to say, oh yeah, we can land on the moon, no problem. It landed a couple times in Texas, a couple times. The rest of the time, it landed in the water. So you can't really tell a lot about that because the Starship is ruined, right? And we want to be able to not only land it, but a few days later, take it off again. That hasn't been tested. So I bring all this up on Coast to Coast, very detailed. And yesterday, out of the blue, with no announcement, NASA unveiled sweeping changes to its Artemis program. And it confirmed that Artemis III is no longer going to attempt to land humans on the moon as originally planned. Duh. Instead, the mission is going to focus on testing technologies in low Earth orbit first. Also, I suggested pushing the next crewed lunar landing attempt to a later mission. We don't know if it's going to be Artemis 4, 5, 6, whatever. But no one has tested docking Orion with Starship. I don't anticipate a huge amount of problem, but Boeing doesn't really have a good track record, you recall. Starship has a great track record. I think that Falcon and all those have been doing a fantastic job at the space station, but Starship is a different deal. These two steps need to be tested, and they need to be tested more than once to raise the probability of success. Somebody needs to land Starship on the moon. Somebody needs to take Starship off from the moon and bring it back. And that needs to be done a couple times. I'm not confident with it. Would you be? One time you're successful, and the next time you are sure you have everything right? You only really learn things from mistakes. Anyway, Artemis II is vital for testing the ability to get to lunar orbit and back again to splash down safely. And I think that's going to go on April Fool's Day. That's my guess. I might be off. They may have another hydrogen leak. I don't know, but they evidently have fixed the fittings. You know, NASA still uses hydrogen as its primary fuel. And, hydrogen is like really small. It's like this small. I can't make my fingers. It's really small. It's one proton. And it will leak through solid metal. That's how small it is. SpaceX uses methane, which is 16 times bigger than hydrogen. Much easier to plug the leak. You do it in your house every single day. Methane is the supply to your furnace or your stove or your water heater. Millions and millions of households use methane. And Elon Musk thought, well, this is pretty low-hanging fruit. We're used to using methane. Methane liquefies at a much higher temperature than hydrogen does. A lot easier to use. Will NASA change? No, they just let SpaceX do it. But the problem is that Artemis II is powered by hydrogen fuel, which is 1960s technology. Elon Musk has the latest cutting edge technology, and he can lift off over and over and over and over. And some of those boosters have been up 50, 60 times and landed back on a floating barge. That's a lot of practice. That's a lot of data. And I think it can be transferred to Starship. Anyway, all of these concerns were revealed by yours truly on Coast to Coast AM with George Noory. And millions of people heard it, including, I believe, Mr. Isaacman's staff. Right. And of course, he's the NASA administrator, in case you don't know who he is. Under the revised roadmap, and you got to remember, they just had from Thursday night to yesterday to put this together. Under the revised roadmap, Artemis III is now expected to launch by mid-2027 as a systems demonstration mission, while a new Artemis IV mission in 2028 will carry the goal of landing astronauts near the moon's south pole. We call that Schrodinger's Basin. It's not a huge area, but the difference is where we have landed equipment before on the moon is like the Mojave Desert or like Death Valley. It's flat, not many obstacles in the way. It's equatorial, and all of our stuff is pretty much in the same region. This time, we're going to be landing on Mount Everest, the equivalent of Mount Everest, about a 16,000-foot peak. And honestly, lots of people have tried it remotely. The problem is, and this is what I told George on Thursday night, the problem is the joystick for flying that ship is here, and the ship is there. And there's a 2-minute lag between what you do on the joystick and what that ship does on the moon. That's 250,000 miles away. So here, of course, you've played video games before, yes? You've used the buttons and the thumb joysticks, or joystick if you're flying a game and you're flying and using buttons. How do you think you would do? How do you think you would do in Formula One or Star Trek or Star Wars or anything with a 2-minute delay from the joystick to the game? I would venture to say you wouldn't do very good. And that's virtual. When it's real, everything crashes. Japanese crashed, Germans crashed, Russians crashed, Indians crashed twice. We've crashed. It's very difficult to do. The south pole of the moon is not very forgiving. It's not very level, and if you do find a level place, you got to land on it right then, right there. You got to stop the ship from traveling sideways across the ground, and you have to land. With a 2-minute delay in your controls, that's pretty damn hard. It has to be done with a pilot. It has to be done with a pilot. So the decision follows delays and mechanical issues, and of course, my comments on Thursday night that have plagued the Artemis program. I haven't really plagued the Artemis program. I've just said, you guys are making giant steps. Okay, this is not something you make giant steps with. You make baby steps and you repeat them so that you can do it over and over again, because now we're talking about human life. I don't care if you splash a starship on the moon. That doesn't bother me a bit. At least you learn something. But if you splash a starship with 6 people on board, or 4 people on board, or 2, it's not a good thing. It really sets the program back. Oh yeah, I'll be the next one to fly that starship up there. No. So anyway, Artemis 2 has been delayed until April 1st, April Fool's Day, as engineers address a helium flow blockage in the upper stage of the Space Launch System rocket. Earlier setbacks also include hydrogen leaks discovered during testing. Same valves, same issues they've had over and over and over again. They don't seem to fix them. They don't seem to learn. What was that? Houston panned the camera perfectly when the lunar lander launched. Yeah, that was pretty easy to do, actually. Targeting systems were easy to build in those days, to follow the simple launch straight up of Eagle. An independent aerospace safety advisory panel recently urged NASA to reconsider Artemis III's ambitious objectives. Somebody on that team must have listened to my broadcast Thursday night, warning that the mission as originally conceived carried significant risk given the complexity of the hardware and the systems involved. And Isaacman described the revised plan as a return to fundamentals. Almost exactly what I said on Thursday night. Emphasizing a step-by-step approach, similar to the building of Apollo 11, landing in 1969, which followed numerous precursor missions. But you have to remember the Eagle there was flown by a pilot. And that pilot had landed that Eagle about 2,000 times in all kinds of terrain. He had practice and practice and practice, and he could fly that thing in the dark. Under the updated schedule, Artemis III will validate critical technologies and spacecraft performance in Earth orbit, like docking with Starship, before committing to a lunar descent. Then you got to kind of dock in orbit around the moon. The moon's gravity is a little tricky. It's not big and homogeneous like Earth's gravity. Okay, it is small and not homogeneous. It's lumpy. Moon has been hit by a lot of heavy asteroids that are sitting beneath the surface in craters, and the density of those asteroids make the moon lopsided. That is to say, one side is not the same density as the other side. That's why the moon is locked into Earth. The heavy side faces Earth. Even though the moon is in orbit around the sun, it should be rotating on its axis freely, but it can't because the heavy side of the moon is facing Earth all the time. Well, that makes it very difficult to orbit, especially with something large. NASA's also indicated that Artemis V could soon follow after, potentially establishing a cadence of annual lunar missions, maybe faster than that, maybe every 8 months. The long-term objective remains establishing a sustained human presence near the moon's south pole, an area believed to contain water ice and could support future exploration. However, the agency's immediate priority has shifted from speed to risk reduction, as it seems to stabilize the program after years of delays. And a lot of you ask the question, why the South Pole? Why are we going there? Well, it goes back to 2006. I think I've discussed it on this program before, but there are a lot of people on tonight, and maybe some of you have not heard it. I did discuss it on Coast to Coast Thursday night because we had an hour to talk about this, and then the next hour we just took calls, which can be quite time-consuming. Calls go everywhere. The reason we're going to the South Pole is because in 2006, we had a mission called L-Cross. And the L-Cross mission was a piece of equipment that orbited the moon, and it was sampling the lunar atmosphere. Yes, there's an atmosphere around the moon. It was sampling the lunar atmosphere with a spectrometer. That's something that identifies different compounds and different elements that might be in that atmosphere. Just because we were doing research, we wanted to know sort of what was in the atmosphere because it would be probably representative of what was on the surface. And the issue is that the rocket system that was designed to keep the orbit stable, because orbits have a tendency to decay if you get too close, ran out of fuel. It ran out of fuel. So it was inevitable that the ship was going to crash into the moon. And I mean, we didn't care, really. It crashes into the moon, no big deal. We just build another one. But there was an opportunity to learn something here. So whenever we build a multi-function spacecraft, we separate the different sections of it with exploding bolts. And we do that mainly because if we're launching it from Earth and something goes wrong, and that thing gets up to about 75,000 feet or 80,000 feet, not quite Earth orbit, and something goes wrong and that payload jettisons or flies out into the atmosphere, we don't want it landing whole into someone's backyard. It's up there going about 17,000 miles an hour, not quite enough to get into orbit or just enough to get into orbit, and it's going to crash like Skylab did. Do you remember Skylab way back? Yeah, it was in the 70s, or maybe it was the early 80s, but I think it was the 70s. Skylab crashed, and we had T-shirts, "I survived Skylab," but it could have landed and really been devastating. We learned from that. So the idea was that they would blow the bolts, separate the rocket motor from the spectrometer safely, which could be done, and then aim the rocket body into a crater on the south pole of the moon. It just looked like a nice big target. It was dark. We assumed that there was some frozen stuff in it, but we didn't know what it was because there's no light on it. We couldn't see it, and there was no way to sample it. So they decided to drop the rocket motor into that crater. And because it's on the south pole of the moon, we could see the impact from Earth on a side view. So we trained telescopes on it and we watched the impact. Now, secondary to the motor hitting the crater, because it's going to create a big plume thousands of feet high, is that the spectrometer would fly through the plume and sample it to see what was in that crater. It would do the analysis and send the sample analysis back to Earth before it crashed into the moon as well. And sure enough, it almost went like clockwork. The rocket motor hit the crater, the huge plume was created, not enough light for us to spectrographically analyze it from Earth. We could see the plume, but it was just one color from Earth. It was white. We couldn't even get any infrared information from it. But the L-Cross spectrometer did a fabulous job of analyzing all that stuff that came up out of that plume, analyzed it, sent it to Earth, and then it smashed into the surface of the moon. That data from the south pole of the moon, a crater called Shackelford Crater, I believe it was. You got Schrodinger's Basin and Shackelford Crater, also named after a great astronomer. That crater contained frozen water and helium-3, which is very rare on Earth. We have some. It's found around volcanoes. But most of the helium, 99.5% of the helium on Earth is helium-4, which is what we fill our party balloons with and what we fly lighter than aircraft with. But helium-3 is unique because it is light a neutron. And the cool thing about this is if we can fuse helium-3 together, it will kick off two energetic protons, which is electricity, and heat, and enough heat to make the reaction happen again and again and again and again. So we just keep feeding helium-3 to it, and it keeps reacting. Of course, that plasma hasn't been created yet, not here on Earth, but we're going to do it eventually. I think it's going to be done on the moon because there's way less atmosphere and way less gravity to perturb that plasma. It would be best doing it in space. We'll see if I'm right or not, but I believe I'm right about this. The challenge is, of course, that Shackelford Crater contains enough helium-3 to power Earth for 10,000 years. Now, that was 2006. We're 20 years later, and the gold rush is on, baby. Every nation in the world wants to get to that helium-3 first. They want to be the first ones there. They want to be the first ones to do the fusion rocketry and fuel and heat and everything else. So that's why we're going to the moon. That's why everybody's going to the moon, and that's why we're targeting the South Pole. So now you all know the full story. It is not necessarily a NASA goal to get there. Yes, it has national security implications, but this is primarily a private industry gold rush. Okay? And SpaceX, yes, they're facilitating a lot, but they're also competing against other private entities and even other governments that want to get to that helium-3 first. All right. You want to talk about the Iran war? Okay, let's talk about that. I see a lot of comments on that in the chat room. So here's the deal, and you can go listen to Alex Jones or DEFCON 0, and you get different opinions, but this is mine. and I believe it's right. Iran is the epicenter of the military arm of the global syndicate. The global syndicate has ruled the world for thousands of years, and different aspects of the global syndicate have been put in check, except for Iran. Iran is led by religious zealots, and you would think this is all led by the mullahs and they came up with all the ideas. That's not true. We believe that there is a link between the mullahs and the British Empire. Yeah. And we believe that the mullahs have been supplying oil to the Chinese for a long time. In fact, I think about 80 to 90% of the oil produced by Iran is bought by China. So, yeah, now you're beginning to see how complex this is. There is a point of no return for them, for us, actually. If we let them keep making intercontinental ballistic missiles and let them keep enriching uranium. Right now, they have made the statement that they have 460 kilograms of 60% or better plutonium. That's enough for a dozen warheads. And not just dirty bombs, we're talking about hydrogen bombs. Of course, Iran has the technology to put that together. They have the money. They had the money. Of course, Barack Obama was involved in sending $1.8 billion to them and then relieving all the sanctions from them. And then Biden sent billions of dollars to them as well, which fueled this mass production of these weapon systems that Iran has. We've always been afraid of the nuclear weapon. That's the political talking point that everybody's been throwing at you. And you kind of think like, yeah, we heard this all before with Syria and Iraq and chemical weapons this and chemical weapons that, whatever. So maybe this nuclear weapon talk is just another Cheney excuse, like, oh, we got to go in, right? Another Colin Powell lie. But the issue is, of course, that once they get to this point of irreducible complexity, let's call it that, where they have enough weapons that they can hide their nuclear program behind that and no one can do anything. And not the nuclear program, but the ballistic missile program was almost there. Did not lack much of being there. Of course, President Trump put that kind of in check in cutting all the money off, so things slowed down significantly. But the money, they were still selling oil to China, and China was a significant source of their revenue, which they were not using to help the people, but they were using to build this nuclear weapons program. So one thing about Iran we know is it's not all Arab. In fact, that's kind of a minority of the population. It's mostly Zoroastrians, Jews, Kurds, all kinds of different factions, but not so much Muslims and mullahs and whatever. The mullahs, however, have taken a militant stand, and they victimize the people on a regular basis and keep them in between the rails, sack up their women and cover their hair and shoot people who will not agree with that. Iran has always been a beautiful country. I've worked with several Iranians back in the 70s and 80s and even early 90s. Wonderful people, smart, educated, and not necessarily Muslim. Seriously. So the free world kind of found the reality that if they let Iran go unchecked, it's going to be a big problem. And the war would actually not be there. It would be here. And it would be in Israel, it would be in Europe, it would be in Saudi Arabia. And so everybody kind of got together. The Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, not so much Jordan. They don't side with anybody. But Egypt and other countries realize that if Iran gets much more powerful, none of us are going to be able to stop it. And it's going to be a huge problem. And the mullahs don't care. They don't care if everybody dies. In fact, they're happy with that. They're just happy with it as a clam. And the global syndicate feels the same way. Human life has no value. What they want is total domination of the planet. And you think to yourself, why? Why would anybody want to control Earth? Who wants to wipe the ass and feed the chirping birds all around the world, 8 billion people? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to take care of all that. Screw a bunch of homeless and screw a bunch of students and protesters. They don't care about that. They don't care about that at all. What they want are the resources. They always did. That's why the global syndicate over and over and over again for thousands of years conquered the world. And who conquered it last? Right, the British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire. You remember those statements? India paid the price. Africa paid the price. France went into Africa, put in puppet leaders and raped those countries. Gold, uranium, diamonds, they took it all. And the African people got nothing. That's what the global syndicate wants. They want all the stuff. They don't want to feed us. They want us all to be Africans, scratching out their resources with our bare hands and dying by the time we're 19 years old. Yeah, serious. It's a serious deal. So we reached this point where something had to be done. And Trump realized that if he waits another year, what we're doing now would be almost impossible. So what are we doing now? Well, we're sinking all the Navy so that they can't shut down the Straits of Hormuz. And I'll touch base on this again in just a second. We are finding as many of the missile launchers as we can find. And that's proving to be a challenge because a lot of the missile launchers are so well hidden, no one can see them until they launch. But once they launch, they're located and they're destroyed. So they get one off, and that is it. And they're pounced on and destroyed. How do I know that? Because the missile launches have dropped 73% in 4 days. The numbers that were launched on day 1 in retaliation, day 2, day 3, and now we're in day 4, they're down 73%. It doesn't mean that Iran is running out of missiles or rockets. It means they're running out of launchers and they're running out of launch spaces. And we're finding them as fast as they light them. We have satellites watching every inch of that country 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We know everything that gets above room temperature in that country. So they are going to get some stuff off because there is a lot of the IRGC that's running in a mode we call fail-safe. Fail-safe is if you don't get orders from us or a phone call from us, you continue with the last orders you got until you're done. And so all these tentacles of the IRGC are operating in automatic. And any communications that are done, cell phone, satellite, cable, any of that stuff is being monitored. They're not talking to one another. They're just shooting. And that's why you have little groups. You have little groups in the Emirates, little groups in Saudi Arabia. You have targets that have been on their map for 3-4 years, and they're just hitting them. They're hitting them as fast as they can get the launchers out of the caves. That is going to end. That is going to end. You're going to see some damage, yes, but it's going to end, and it's going to end very quickly. So that's what's going on in Iran. And by the time it's done, Iran is not going to be a military force anymore. It's just not. It's going to be like the Philippines. It's going to be like Japan. It's not going to be a military force anymore. So the decision is being mulled over right now. Actually, the solution is being mulled over as we speak. What do we do at that point? What do we do when Iran is no longer a military force? Well, somebody has to guarantee their safety. Somebody has to allow all of the factions of Iran to get represented in their constitutional republic and make a peaceful government. They got to free the people so they go back to the way they were in 1965, able to wear whatever they want, dance whenever they want, sing whatever they want. And they're no longer being sacked up and and covered up by men who are gay, who are afraid of women, who only like to screw little boys and animals. Once those perverts are gone, once all those animals are gone, then the rest of the country can take over and make it run. That's going to be difficult to do. Yes, we have government in a box. We could go in there, pour water, and government comes out. The trouble is it starts with assemblymen and judges and magistrates and senators and congressmen. And how long does that take? It takes a long time. Because those people are not represented right now. They're not. They have no representation. It's taxation without representation, which is tyranny, which is exactly what's been going on in Iran. That's why it's the global syndicate, the home base of the global syndicate. We don't have years and years and years to put this government together. We can't reimagine the Persian government the way that it was. It's very difficult to find all those people, have the elections, get the right people in place, get the right representation in place. So I'm saying, this is my opinion, I'm saying that they're going to have to use technology. Technology is probably going to be somewhere along an artificial intelligence line, and Iran is going to come up and get running very, very quickly. Oh, I don't know, Mark. I don't think Turkey's next on Israel's agenda. No, Turkey is not like that. Istanbul and even Erdogan, he's the egomaniac and he wanted to be the caliphate or the caliph of the caliphate. But we have an airbase there, Incirlik, and they're a member of NATO, and I don't think they're going to be attacked. I think they're going to fall right in line. Turkey's not being attacked right now, and I think they're going to fall right in line. So I disagree with you, Mark. I don't think that's going to happen. What is that? Laurel Flower says U.S. will eventually leave the area with its tail down and many troops killed. I hope not. I do know that these types of wars are started from the air and they're finished on the ground. They're finished by men on the ground. But I don't think we're going in there to nation build. We're going in there to liberate the people. Similar to, like, we bombed the holy shit out of France. We carpet bombed it. Horrible mess. Lancasters in the night, B-17s during the day. It was around the clock bombing the shit out of France. Why? Because the Nazis were there. But once we drove the Nazis out, once the Nazis were taken out of power, we didn't take over France. Yes, we lost a lot of soldiers there, and there are a lot of tombstones on Normandy and other places around France because we liberated that country. We've done it before. It needs to be done again. And by the way, it's the same beasts. Yes, the mullahs are the Nazis. No, they don't necessarily have to speak German, but they are Nazis. They became Nazified under Adolf Hitler, and they took over Persia in 1928. 1938, it was over. It was done. Persia was renamed Iran, which means Aryan. And the mullahs just took it from there. They just took it from there. And basically what they were fighting is the CIA. Because the CIA had the Shahs and had these color revolutions. You know the story, right? The mullahs were fighting all that, and they just happened to enslave the people while they were at it. And listen to Taka Dave. If you're listening to Scott Ritter, you're in big trouble. Scott Ritter is a dumbass. Scott Ritter has lost his freaking mind. I used to follow him. I used to listen to him. I used to watch his analysis with Judge Napolitano. Scott Ritter is a fool. Do not listen to Scott Ritter. I don't often say things about other commentators that are out there, but Scott Ritter will get you in a lot of trouble. Do not follow what he is saying. Thank you, Delamiao. I'm just telling you, this is my opinion, yes, and I am a citizen political analyst, but I'm damn good at it. And I'm usually right. All right. Let's see. Yeah. Yes, I said the A word. Right. I didn't say the F word, though. We don't say that very often on this program. I am a family-friendly show. What is that, K.O. Kelly? There's been a new covenant? You know, a covenant is like an eternal promise that's made that you can't break. Right? You have to flesh me a little bit more than just saying that. I'm worried about that myself, Laurel Flower, about all the glyphosate in glyphosate in all of our farmland. I think the USDA is doing the right thing. They're moving away from the chemicals. Did you see the laser weed killer? Yeah, it's like another piece of farm equipment that goes on the tractor, and you pull it when the plants are very young, when the weeds are really a big problem. That's when they usually go and spray the Roundup kind of stuff, the glyphosate, to kill off the weeds so it doesn't compete with the crops as they're coming up. What this does is it has a wide footprint, about 20, 25 feet wide. You pull it behind the tractor, and what it does is it analyzes the plants that are coming up out of the ground. And if there are weeds, it zaps them with a laser. And this thing can go along pretty fast. It can go along about as fast as a planter. So you just put that on the back of your tractor and you drive your field, and it zaps all the weeds right down to the dirt, kills them. And that way you don't have to use any of these herbicides. It could be the solution to everything. We're going to see some technology that you haven't seen before in farming. And we need to, because these chemicals are really damaging and making people sick. So I'm right with you. Okay. Is it called Blue Beam? I don't know. I have to look it up myself. I've seen the video. It seemed very impressive to me. It didn't look like it was hugely expensive. Something that can infrared analysis of the plant, and it can determine whether the plant is a friendly or a not, and it just takes out the not friendly plants. Okay, Mark, what is this now? Neither ET nor Trump is going to save us. We're going to have to do it ourselves. Well, that's why we have government, Mark. I'll talk a little bit about the primaries. Primaries are important because Trump had 36 endorsements. All 36 won their primaries. So MAGA is still very, very powerful. But that doesn't mean they're going to win their general election. It just means that those Republican endorsees won their primary. They still have to run against a Democrat in the open election. So I want to repeat what I said, I think it was last Sunday. I don't have any inside information, but I have a gift. And I would say this executive order is going to be called the Emergency Election Infrastructure Safety Act. And Trump is going to write an executive order that's going to ban mail-in ballots. No more mail-out ballots, no more mail-in ballots. Everybody votes in person one time. Now, the argument with the SAVE Act is to have ID or not ID. That's still in the works. That has some legit arguments about it. One is once you have a national ID, you now have something that the government can monitor, and every move you make is going to be checked, even if you buy it with cash. So there are issues with it. The other is the only reason that we have 50 votes in the Senate is because of compromise. And the compromise is allowing people to use their driver's license to vote. It's ID, it has their picture, it's government issued. The problem is that not all the driver's licenses are linked to a birth certificate. Yeah, New Jersey, Illinois, California, lots of states, they issue driver's licenses to illegals who do not belong here. That is to say, I mean, they're driving our roads, so we might as well know who they are, right, if we pull them over. But it automatically puts them on the voter rolls, and they get called for jury duty, and they're allowed to vote. And they are voting by the hundreds of thousands, and they're swinging elections. Not only that, but they're also influencing the census. Because of their warm body that was counted on the census, the Democrats have more representation. That's why they moved them where they moved them, so that they could have more representation. That's why Somalis aren't scattered all over the country. They're concentrated in Minnesota so they can have that state. Then if you look at the rest of our republic, that's kind of cheating the system, isn't it? You're not stuffing the ballot box, you're stuffing it with voters. And the reality is that the Trump administration has already deported over 800,000 registered Democrats. That's devastating. I mean, that's going to hurt them everywhere. It's already hurting them in the primaries. And it's going to be worse because we're now up to something like 3.4 million that have left the country, but we don't know how many of those were registered Democrats. We do know over 800,000 of them were. So that means they're not going to be voting in the general election. It might be okay, but I would rather see an ID that's linked to a birth certificate, a passport, a safe ID, something like that. You know, a safe ID is linked to your birth certificate in the state. It takes a little while to get, but it's not that expensive. And once you have it, you know, you got the ID, you can get on airplanes and you can vote. Illegals can't get that ID because they don't have a birth certificate. And that's what protects the system. However, the cheat by mail system can't be stopped. And there are states like Washington and Arizona, and like we just recently saw in Virginia. Holy shit. Look what happened in Virginia. A commie named Spanberger snuck into the system with about 130,000 mail-in ballots that showed up after hours. And they were all for her. What? Yeah, because they were printed off-site and then they were sent to the counting station and counted. And that's how she won. Same with Katie Hobbs. Same with a bunch of other senators, governors, secretaries of state. That's why mail-in balloting has to end. It has to end. Now, a lot of people are saying, but the president can't, involve himself in state elections. He can under a state of emergency. He's going to declare a state of emergency, and he's not going to stop the election. What he's going to say is this is an executive order called the Election Infrastructure Emergency Safety Act. And it's going to be a national security issue. And here's the thing about it. This primary that you just saw with Jasmine Crotchet saying that, they cheated. Al Green now has to go to a runoff. Can you believe it? Al Green? Who would vote for that idiot? Well, mail-in ballots are already printed and sitting in the system, and all they have to do is feed him in the system, and he could win. So what has happened is we are now hearing Democrats, not just Jasmine Crotchet, who are saying that the Republicans cheated. Yeah, they cheated. They loaded the ballot box. They disenfranchised black people. They whatever, So the point is that the discontent with the election system is now bipartisan. It's now bipartisan. It's now not 80% of the population. It's like 90% of the population. They're saying, wait a minute. Just wait a minute. We have to reestablish the integrity of our election system. Because the Republicans are cheating. Because the Democrats are cheating. Because. Cheating. Okay, fine. So we're going to write an executive order called the Emergency Election Infrastructure Safety Act. And it's going to have momentum, and it's going to pass. And when it does, there'll be no more mail-in ballots. None. If you're in the service, if you're in hospital or traveling, yes. But we're talking about a very small number of ballots, like this many. See how I got my fingers? About this many ballots. Very small amount. Only if the election comes down to like 1%. Then they'll say, oh, okay, well, let's open the mail-in ballots and see what we got. But that's going to be a very small amount. It's not going to be hundreds of thousands of votes. It's going to be tens of thousands of votes, if that. So, and people have to write in to get that mail-in ballot, and they have to be in the service, active duty, in the hospital, or traveling. And that's the only conditions under which you can get a mail-in ballot. And it ain't going to be whole states like Arizona and Washington State and others. And believe me, I met with the secretaries of state. I met with the attorneys general from those states, talked to them face to face. And they said, well, we don't, we'll get it next time. Next election, we'll get it. No. If you don't fix 2020, you're never going to get out of this. Well, now we know 2020 was stolen. Now we know 2018 was stolen. Now we know 2022 had problems. And it was only because we made it too big to rig that we were able to overwhelm those systems. We can't do that every time. And we shouldn't have to do it. Our election infrastructure should have enough integrity to be able to keep us free and preserve our method of rebellion. Because that's what we do. That's what Americans do. We were founded on rebellion, and by God, every 2 years we rebel against the establishment with our vote, with our voice. But it doesn't count if illegals are voting in our place, disenfranchising us, Americans, or counterfeit ballots are being printed as a mail-in ballot and then sent into the counting stations, disenfranchising us as well. You know that's what's happening. I know that's what's happening. The only way to stop it is with the Emergency Election Infrastructure Safety Act. Mark my words, it is going to happen. It'll start as an executive order, and then it'll go to vote. And right now it has a lot of popular support on both sides. All right, let's see here. Yeah. Well, I'm with you, Fifth Element. The thing is, you can love my show all you want. I'm never going to let you down. Scott Ritter has lost his mind. He's lost his mind. He is not thinking correctly. I don't know who got to him. I don't know who bought him out. But what he has been saying the last couple of months is insane. It's insane and it's wrong. Okay? It's insane and it's wrong. All right, let's fine. Have him call me. Have him call me, and I'll have the discussion with him on the air. All right, Scott, you with me? I'm just telling you, you've lost your mind. That's good. Washaki Win says, Pam has the executive order on her makeup table, and she's looking it over. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I like McGregor. McGregor's a pretty solid guy. I like his analysis. Scott Ritter has lost his mind. All right, let's take a quick break. Let me make sure that yes, we're still connected. We should be hearing music any second now. Yes, there we go. All right, we'll be right back after this. Please don't go away.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
The rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
Through everything, we have to remember that we have more in common than not in common. And to find this common ground, tune in to Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio A. Because we come to this table of life to learn in the best possible way and experience this gift of life from our mutual Creator. So let's learn together and build our best future with Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Condition 1, as we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in. And I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We'll never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
All right. Thank you, Revolution Radio, for that great station identification. We appreciate you so much. We would be nowhere without Revolution Radio listeners. 4 million strong, scattered all over the world, mostly here in the United States. Orange Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, everywhere where good podcasting can be found live and free. We're also, of course, on the video platform. So those of you that are listening by audio only, pay close attention because we're going to visit my website, which is brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Those of you watching by video, we're just going to do it by clicking this button that's on the screen. And you're going to know you're there because it says, I'm Brooks Agnew. There's my picture. It doesn't get any simpler than that, right? Scroll down just a little bit on your phone, your iPad, your PC, or your tablet, and you'll see two blue buttons. One says, get my free newsletter. A bunch of people from coast to coast signed up for my newsletter. Thank you guys so much. Hope you're here listening tonight. And the other is Ivan and Fenben without a prescription. We use code words on this because we're on YouTube tonight. We don't want to get banned. But you know what these products do. You just don't know where to find them. Now you do, because you can find them at my website. We will send them directly to you with the purchase of the digital report. That's what we're selling. We're selling a digital report, and we give you the product for free as a free sample. And the Ivan is here. The Fenben is here in 444 milligram strength, which is most of the people treating various illnesses like cancer. This is the strength that they use. And don't forget about HCQ. A lot of you know what this is from 5 years ago. We finally found a source of it, and now we're offering it again. I have some right here on my website. And there are some of you that ordered it this last week, and guess what? They already got it because I have it right here in my warehouse. That's how quick it goes. If you want to know how to use these, you can ask me, of course, but I can't tell you because I'm not a doctor and can't give medical advice. But I can provide you the book, Fenbendazole and Ivermectin Protocols, Practical Handbook. It's a #1 seller in its field. This guy answers all your questions. Hundreds of my customers have ordered this book, and they're using these products, Ivan, Fenben, and hydroxy or HCQ, to treat themselves or to prevent themselves from getting sick. And now you know where to get it, and you don't need a prescription, and you cannot beat my price. All right. Also, don't forget about the True Niagen. I've been taking it for 8 years. Trust me, this is the stuff that helps your NAD, which is a very important molecule in your body, to go into production again. What does this molecule do? Well, it keeps you young, keeps your telomeres long on your chromosomes. It promotes the high density of mitochondria in your muscles. And this is what gives you the energy to do the daily work that you do. And I've aged. I mean, yes, I've got 8 years chronologically, but I haven't aged in 8 years. And it's because of the True Niagen. Thousands of my friends take True Niagen and they swear by it. They use it every single day. And they're all blowing their friends away. They go to the gym and work out, and people say, well, how old are you? 55? No, I'm 70. How can that be? It's the True Niagen. Trust me. I don't make a dime on it. All I'm doing is facilitating the sale. Click the buy now button. It'll take you right to the site where you can buy it. The other is Zima. That's zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B6 complex. This is the most awesome zinc tablet you can ever take. It's not a tablet, it's a capsule. And it will work with the Ivan and Fenben to really produce some fantastic results. You start getting a little bit of a sore throat, start getting a little bit of congestion in your nose. You've been around somebody that's got the flu. You've been to a concert. You've been on an airplane. Start taking this stuff and you won't get sick. Year after year after year, and you're going to say, man, when is the last time I had the flu? You won't get it. That's what these do. Also, don't forget about the Insulis. I have it here on my desk. Take it 3 times a day, several drops under the tongue. It lowers your A1C. numbers. It'll make your doctor very surprised. Oh, you people that are very close to type 2 diabetic, this is the stuff you need right here, Insulis. And don't forget about the fluoride-free toothpaste. I use it every single day. I haven't had fluoride in my mouth for 20 years. My teeth are white, and I don't have fluoride turning my pineal gland into a piece of pumice in the middle of my head. You don't need fluoride. And this also doesn't have the harsh abrasives that are bad for your teeth. It's a great toothpaste. And guess what? It doesn't cost any more than that crap you're buying in the supermarket. Yeah, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend this or that, Crest or Aquafresh or Colgate. You know what the 5th dentist did? He said, this is a bunch of crap. I'm going to start using Himalaya toothpaste. And that's what you should do too. All right. And a lot of people are using the methylene blue in the form of Blue Boost. They're not taking the eyedropper and putting it on their tongue and spilling it on their clothes and carpet and whatever. Blue Boost is the stuff, let me tell you. It really makes you laser focused. If you've got a project you're working on, you want to finish, take the Blue Boost and you'll be all over it. All right, let's get back to it. We got stuff we have to talk about. Okay, here we go. Have kind of a side view going so you're not staring me in the eyes right now. There's a new space telescope coming. Oh, this thing is something else now. It's called the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. People just call it the Roman telescope. And it is an infrared space telescope, and it's scheduled to launch later this year or early 2027. It's named after former NASA Chief of Astronomy Nancy Grace Roman. I went to the Catawba Science Center this weekend, and I listened to a fantastic Kosovian female astronomer who is working on her PhD. She gave a presentation about how she brought not only astronomy to Kosovo, but she built an observatory. Yeah, and her struggle with putting that together, all the money, all the work, and made opening day. And it was a wonderful story of overcoming. And you know what was really cool? I think I have mine here. Hold on one second while I grab this. She could have read my book, because what she pulled up on the screen was her future book. Yeah. She pulled her future book and she held it up, and there in her future book was a image of her observatory sketched out in her book. She wrote it as a dream project in her future book, which if you've read Remembering the Future, the Physics of the Soul and Time Travel. By the way, here's the house I'm living in right now. Yeah. It's in the dream book. It's in the dream book, in my future book. And she put the drawing from her future book and the image of the finished observatory, and they were almost identical. It was like a vision that she'd had, right? Well, it was a vision. That's what I'm saying. That's what the dream book does. So a lot of these projects that are put together work just like that. They work just like that. And I was so impressed with her hard work and her mastery of English and politics and whatever it took to get the money to build this thing. And Celestron, played a huge role in this. Of course, if you've ever played with telescopes, it was Meade and Celestron for a long, long time. And then Meade sold out and Celestron became the dominant amateur telescope out there. But the telescopes got very good, like 10-inch, 12-inch, and this was a 14-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, quite expensive, 25 Gs plus. And this telescope has enough focal length and mirror big enough, it can gather enough light to really be the brains, the workhorse behind the observatory. It's really quite fantastic. If you've ever had a chance to go to your local observatory, they got one somewhere. A high school has one. We have one at Catawba Astronomy Club, has a 25-inch Dobsonian. A Dobsonian scope's not a Schmidt-Cassegrain scope. It actually is big. It has a focal length of about 10 feet. And you climb a ladder to look through the eyepiece, and you grab a hold of the handle and swing it around to what you're going to, because it's not motor drive. And my gosh, you look through this telescope at, say, the Pleiades or Orion, past that area, and it just takes your breath away. There's so much color. There's so much light that it's very hard to believe. You've looked up there a million times. You've never seen this. But you go to your local observatory, you can see it. Well, now this unit is going to be 2.4 meters. That's almost 8 feet across in the field of view in the primary mirror, and it's going to carry two scientific instruments. The wide field instrument is a 300.8 megapixel multiband visible and near infrared camera. It should make crystal clear images. The sharpness of these images will be breathtaking. And it will actually do a 0.28 square degree field of view. This is 100 times larger than the image Hubble can take. 100 times larger. It's going to be fabulous. And I think they're going to put it up in a gravity well. Hang on a second here. It was recommended in 2010 by the United States National Research Council as the top priority for the next decade of astronomy. 17th of February 2016, it was approved. 20th of May 2020, Jim Bridenstine, who was the NASA administrator in 2020, announced that the mission would be named the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope in recognition of the former NASA chief of astronomy, Nancy Grace Roman's role in the field of astronomy. So in October of this year, October of 2026, they have a launch engine commitment of May of 2027. And as of January 2026, just about 2 months ago, the launch is expected to occur no earlier than September 2026. Pretty fabulous. I'm trying to see what gravity well they're going to stick it in. Let's see here. The James Webb is in L2 gravity well. L2 has advantages versus geosynchronous orbit in available data rate and propellant required, but advantages for improved observing constraints, better thermal stability because it's very cold, somewhere around 20 degrees Kelvin, and more benign radiation environment because it's hidden behind a shield. And L2 is pretty stable. It's where you would put any kind of Trojan asteroid, but fortunately there aren't a lot of Trojan asteroids in this gravity well. But now there will be two telescopes, the James Webb and the Roman telescope. Pretty fantastic stuff. I'm really excited about it. I can't wait to see the images from it. Some of the employees at the center expressed concern that the manner and timing of the closures would disrupt work on those projects, namely the government shutdown, which we're suffering from ourselves. As you know, I have an import business that deals with the products that I just showed you during the break. And with the Democrat shutdown, we have not been able to get product through the U.S. Customs very well for about 3 weeks. Yeah, it hurts everybody. And we hope that the Democrats stop playing their damn games and let us go back to work. You're not accomplishing anything by keeping DHS shut down, except you're pissing me off. All right. I want to talk a little bit about energy supply. What was that, Mark? Hold on a second. The chat's going too quick. Okay. Oh, you remember Nancy Grace, who was an assistant DA in Atlanta, mid-'80s. She became a famous TV legal commentator, but sadly became very fat. Oh, I don't know. Yes. Ever been to a planetarium laser light show to Dark Side of the Moon? Yes, I have, Mark. The Catawba Science Center has a great planetarium, and they have a laser show to Dark Side of the Moon. You can go straight and go on your journey, go on your trip. You don't need mushrooms or alcohol or anything. Let me tell you, it's something. Oh, you want me to change back to the other camera? Okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much for pointing that out. There we go. Now I'm looking right at you instead of from the side. I just wanted you to see the carriage house and what it looks like. So I appreciate you, JCW. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes. Well, okay. The thing about it is Alternatives Media, we call it a gravity well. These are L1, L2, L3, L4. These are points of equidistance called Lagrange points, which are between two gravitational bodies where you're neither attracted nor repelled to either one. It's kind of a halfway point. It's called the gravity well. And it's a place where Trojan asteroids often hang out because they're moving through space and they just kind of fall into this well, and that's where they stay. James Webb has an effective heat shield, and it blocks the sun. It hides behind this little heat shield where it's nice and cool, and that way it can take pictures of deep space. And that's what this one's going to do as well. I know, Mark, I know. Nothing like a Floyd concert. I saw them at the Forum, and I don't even remember what year it was. It was in the 70s at the Forum in Los Angeles, and it was 4-channel. It was in the round. And Pink came out. Well, let me tell you, first of all, there was a fly that was on the audio flying around the audience, and it's like flying right through your head. We'd never experienced the 4-channel speaker system before. And the fly would fly around, and then it would land, and you'd hear these footsteps walk across the arena and take a swing at it with a fly swatter and miss, and the fly would take off again. And it was it went on for the whole, 20 minutes, maybe not that long. Maybe it was 10 minutes or 5 minutes, but seemed like a long time. And meanwhile, you're not really paying attention to what's going down on the stage. One by one, the band members came out and got in place, and the fly ended up landing, and the footsteps that were running across the stadium in your ears caught up with the fly, swung the fly swatter, and squished the fly. And the concert started just like that. It was incredible. And Pink had this wand. It was about 4 feet long and had a ball on the end of it. And during the points where they're doing a lot of ambient music in Pink Floyd, he picked up the wand and he would aim it at a corner of the stadium or the arena, and the sound would move to that speaker system. And then he would aim over here to the left, and then he would aim to the back, and then to the other side. And then he took the wand and he started swinging it around his head like this. And the sound was going around. And I mean, there were people falling over, a lot of stoned people in this concert. But it just totally disoriented you. It was a magnificent concert. I've never seen anything before like it since. Not punk, Pink. Pink, P-I-N-K, Roger Pink. He's a member of the band. All right, let's talk about low voltage local supply. In 2012, I know we're going back a ways, aren't we? In 2012, I spoke at the Breakthrough Energy Conference in Amsterdam about the need for low voltage local supply generation for America and Europe. At the time, the corporation that runs all the grid, it's a private contractor, was getting ready to receive a $2.2 billion grant to upgrade and manage the grid, okay? And what we were there to do at this Breakthrough Energy Conference was to petition for 1% of the money. We wanted 1% of the money, which was about $2.2 million, right? Maybe it was a little more than that. Maybe it was $2.2 million. And what we wanted to do was an exploratory construction of a package generator, a generator that produced 440 volts, not 161,000 volts the way the big nuclear power generators do. And we had several technologies that we were going to try. Some of them was thorium, and we had some other stuff. None of it was quote unquote nuclear powered. But the idea was that we made the case that there was a need, and it was going to get just worse as time went on, for local supply, like a factory or a computer bank or a neighborhood somewhere not on the grid. Like, the grid is what determines where population grows in our country. And if you ever fly from, I don't know, if you fly from Charlotte to Phoenix at night, what you're going to see is a lot of vast open spaces that there's nothing there. There might be a freeway, but there's no town, there's no city. And the reason is because there is no power lines there. There are no power lines there. So no power lines, no domiciles, no factories, no gas station, nothing. So the idea was to put in a low voltage local supply that would be just enough to supply a small town of maybe 600 or 700 people, or a factory, or a server farm. And of course, in 2012, we didn't really have server farms popping up everywhere. We had Microsoft was building a few data centers. I think it was about that time that Microsoft was building a new one in Moses Lake, Washington. There was one being built in Draper in Utah. And they were there because there were cold bodies of water that they could use for cooling. But they were going to be hooked to the grid, and they were going to be sucking the energy out of these cities. Now, of course, here we are in 2026, and AI is on the verge of becoming a real thing. And it is in a lot of places, but the thing that's not out there is power for the server farms. Like just last year, a friend of mine and I went down to do an evaluation of an old textile mill. I don't know if you know this or not, but North Carolina and South Carolina used to be the center of yarn and textiles in America. Then it all went overseas, but the plants are still there. And they're big, 500,000 square feet, 600,000 square feet. They're big plants and they're empty. But what this plant had was a gas-fired turbine that generated 30 megawatts. Not a whole lot of power, but just enough to sell, or actually purchase, one of the buildings at the plant, which was the office structure, and not all 4 floors of it, just the server section. It was well insulated, already had the floors in it for all the trays and the cables and all that stuff. And with a 30 megawatt power station, it would be perfect as an AI server farm. Because you know all these things are liquid cooled now, right? So you have to use the chillers on the outside, but you got to have enough energy to run it. So the idea was to refurbish the gas-fired turbine generator and generate enough electricity to run the server farm. And I believe that property sold just for that purpose. There aren't a lot of situations like that out there that have their own power station associated with them. And those power stations don't generate 161,000 volts. They generate maybe 13,800 volts, and then they step that down to 4160 and into the plant. But we were making the proposal of low voltage local supply. And maybe it was a little bit before our time, but we could already see that manufacturing and data center demands exceeded the grid's foreseeable supply. High voltage step down to local supply is what we call the grid. That's what you have going to your house. That's those big high tension lines you see going overhead. 161,000 volts, step down to 38.5, then to 14.4, and then to 480 for factories and 240 for your house. So low voltage supply is a local reactor that does not connect to the grid. It connects to the factory or to the community or to the server farm. So I met with the Trump administration in 2016, right at Christmas, between, we call it transition. Trump had been elected, but he hadn't been inaugurated. And I met with them to talk to them about these low voltage solutions. And Steve Bannon's secretary was not listening. And she basically ended my opportunity to make my presentation. Now, President Donald Trump is set to meet today with leaders of major technology companies, including Google, Meta, and OpenAI, to formalize a pledge aimed at protecting consumers from rising electricity costs tied to the rapid expansion of energy-intensive data centers. Ta-da! The White House has said the so-called Ratepayer Protection Pledge, announced by Trump in his State of the Union address, would see firms commit to measures designed to ensure the boom in artificial intelligence infrastructure. It does not translate into higher utility bills for everybody, for you and me, and for brownouts and things like that. Hang on, somebody keeps texting me. I just want to make sure it's not something, I have something hanging out of my nose or something, and they're trying to let me know. Oh, no. It's something else. It's spam. So no problems. I have had stranger things happen, let me tell you. Yeah. Like your mic is muted. And I didn't even know. But I'm looking at my dashboard and everything looks 5x5. Anyway, the White House has made this pledge, and President Trump's Ratepayer Protection Pledge will deliver more affordable, reliable, and secure energy for the American people and help stop the rising electricity prices that started during the previous administration, Energy Secretary Chris Wright said in a statement. Now, all these big users are the customers for these low voltage reactors. And the initiative is being launched ahead by the November midterm elections, with voters increasingly concerned about energy affordability. I am. I mean, I built this carriage house. We have 3 heat pumps, 1 here up in the carriage house and 2 for the main house over on the other side of the courtyard. And it draws a little bit of juice to run those. And I'm not really happy with the light bill, so we're working some wireless programming into the thermostats to make that drop. But it's much higher than the last estate that I built. And I believe it's because the supplier, which is Duke Energy, has raised their prices. So the pledges are expected to include a commitment by technology companies to bring or buy electricity supplies for their data centers, either from new power plants or existing plants with expanded output capacity. Not solar, not wind. That's bullshit. Wind generators are coming down faster than they ever went up. And the solar farms that are out there, from Arizona all the way to Kentucky, they're junk. They're junk. They are falling apart. They're covered in dust. They have burned up microconverters. Their combiner boxes are fried. We're talking huge technological misconceptions about what the needs would be for solar power. Plus, the actual cells themselves, they start out at 15% efficient. Let that sink in just for a second. You put a brand new solar panel out there, the best solar panels on the market, and it converts 15% of the solar energy that hits it into electricity. 15%. And then it starts to go down because the crystals rot. And within 5 years, you're at 50%. Wait a minute, what are we talking about here? We're going to put out 200-300 acres of solar panels, and we're going to be very pleased with the output for the first year. And then it goes down by 10%. Then it goes down by 15%. Then it goes down by 20%. We're going, hey, what the heck's going on? The solar panels rot. And guess what? You can't recycle a solar panel. So you pull out all the old solar panels and throw them in the landfill and go buy new solar panels. From who? Who? China. Does China use the solar panels for anything? No. They don't use solar power. They already know the weaknesses of it. But they're happy to sell it to us. And we're happy to give all kinds of rebates to towns and cities and houses to put them up. And it's a big loser. So that means that the low voltage local supply has to be created another way, like thorium reactors or what are called depleted uranium reactors. It's still uranium. You still have a little bit of nuclear waste, but that product is good for 5 or 8 years. And it can produce a lot of electricity in a small amount of space. Companies expected at the White House include some of the biggest names in the tech sector, which are investing billions in new AI computing capacity that draws vast amounts of electricity. They need the energy. They need the power. But guess what they don't have? An answer. Call me. Call me. We'll set it up. Trump has urged those firms to build or secure dedicated power capacity to meet demand rather than relying solely on regional grids. Exactly, precisely what I talked about in 2012 at the Breakthrough Energy Conference. It is not clear, however, that the effort will get new supplies of electricity built quick enough to ease pressure on grids, said John Gordon, who is the director of Advanced Energy United, a clean energy trade group that includes some data centers. That's in part due to Trump's policy focus on increasing natural gas and other fossil fuel-fired data centers instead of quicker build sources like solar and wind, which are pieces of junk, and Trump's not going to subsidize those. The real problem is the inability to get generation online fast enough to meet the data center demand. Well, we told you in 2012, it's 2026. We could have had them all built. All you had to do is drop the fuel in it and go. Truck it over to the location, hook up the cables, and boom, you got energy. But no, you don't want to do that. Advocates and critics alike will be watching closely to see whether the pledge produces concrete commitments or remains largely symbolic, as lawmakers and consumer groups have called for stronger protections to prevent utility bill increases tied to data center buildouts. I'm sorry, it's coming. And we told you already. Yes, of course. All the technology is conceptual, but it's not that hard to build. We're talking 90 days to a prototype, maybe 120 days to a prototype. We don't have to solve anything. We're ready to go. All we need is the money. Yeah. Sure, go down to the bank and borrow me some. It won't work. You have to have a signed contract from one of the data centers saying, we'll buy all the electricity you can make. That's the way it works. That's how you build the wind farms. That's how you build the solar farms. You pre-sell everything. So we're talking 100 $180,000 per package unit. And then you got to add the radioactive material to it to get it fired up, or use natural gas if it's available with a gas-powered turbine. Yeah, that's right, Mark. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. Yeah. Run, Rabbit, Run. What a great song. All right, let's finish it off by talking about the Great Fall of China. I have a series of these that I've written called The Great Fall of China because we've seen the disastrous one-child policy. We've seen their trade imbalances. We've seen their efforts to try to take over other countries like Venezuela and Egypt and other places, take them over and insert all of their nationals into those countries to get citizenship and basically take the land. We've seen all that, and we see what a losing proposition it is. And as if you haven't figured it out by now, President Trump's strategy, what's going on this week, is twofold. Despite being the longest State of the Union address in modern U.S. history, President Donald Trump's 2026 speech marked the first time in 2 decades that an American president did not directly mention China. Did you notice? Did you notice? I was waiting for it. It was like part of our drinking game. How many times is he going to mention China? Oh, we were all sober at the end of the speech because he never mentioned it. Many observers have attributed this omission to timing. Trump is scheduled to meet Chinese President Xi, the infamous Mr. Xi, in Beijing in April. But a closer look suggests, and I'm going to make this assertion, Trump's careful approach to China reflects 2 important domestic factors. Are you ready for this? The first is an internal Republican battle over tariffs. Oh yeah, it's not unified in the Republican Party, let me tell you, over these tariffs. Because the Chinese own a lot of politicians, right? They own McConnell. They own several other senators and congressmen. The Chinese just own them. They have spied on them for a long time and compromised them, and they own them. And it's intensified by a recent Supreme Court ruling against his tariff authority, which was a very narrow aspect of tariffs. And of course, the looming midterms that are coming up. So this applies a lot of pressure. And Trump's upcoming visit to Beijing will be the first by a sitting American president since he did it in 2017. Remember that, when he went to the Forbidden City? He has repeatedly touted his excellent relationship with Mr. Xi, President Xi. Earlier this month, Trump described a phone call between the 2 leaders as very positive and their relationship as extremely good. While Washington has adopted more conciliatory tone toward Beijing, prioritizing trade over flashpoints such as, Taiwan, that's still not off the table, Beijing has not fully reciprocated. Following the call, Chinese officials issued a statement warning against U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. It's happened before, and I hate to tell you this, Mr. Xi, it's going to happen again. Some argue that even a president as unpredictable as Trump understands that publicly attacking China right now would be not very smart if he hopes to secure trade deals during his April visit. However, Trump sharply criticized China in his 2018, 2019, and 2020 State of the Union addresses, even when meetings or calls with Xi were imminent. So how come he's silent this time? You wonder that? I did. The answer actually lies in our politics, American politics. Throughout his second term, Trump has embraced an expansive view of presidential power. You're aware of that, right? You're aware of that. I mean, Trump's kicking ass, right? He treats tariffs as a flexible instrument of leverage in negotiations with Beijing and everybody else. Of course, the Supreme Court rebuked one of his use of global tariffs, which was probably pretty smart because all it would take is the Democrats to retake Congress or elect a Democrat president, and they could declare some kind of climate emergency and load up the world with tariffs that way and just rip everybody off. So the idea of using an emergency to authorize tariffs was struck down by the Supreme Court, and it was probably a good thing. Anyway, the ruling has disrupted some of Trump's economic agenda. It has restricted some of his ability to deploy tariffs quickly and unilaterally. And it does weaken him a little bit, but it also weakens the Democrats, and I think that was a smart idea. Let's see. So Trump moved to restore measures under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, which does not deal with emergencies. It just deals with balancing payments. So Beijing now understands that Trump's remaining economic tools are slower, they're more constrained, a reality that will shape negotiations when he arrives in Beijing in April. Doesn't mean they're impossible, not by any means. China has steadily strengthened its own leverage since the first trade war began in 2018. Beyond matching U.S. tariffs with retaliatory duties, Beijing has expanded its use of non-tariff countermeasures, tightening export controls on rare earth minerals. And that's a big problem for us because we need them in all kinds of stuff, like U.S. defense technology. And then we are plagued by what we call dumping investigations. I don't know if you've ever run a factory that you had to have raw materials like aluminum or zinc or cobalt or steel. China is a big source for all of that. And it's very difficult to beat their price. And we were not tariffing this as it comes into our country, but the finished goods going out of our country, like truck parts and engines, that were tariffed horribly trying to go into China. That's why we had this big trade deficit. China would also send steel and aluminum to Canada. Canada would then reprocess and relabel that metal and dump it into the United States. And of course, these two metals particularly, and copper, were subsidized by the Chinese government, and thus they were able to sell well below what domestic suppliers of these three metals could supply them for. And the issue was China wasn't making any money, but they were accomplishing something, and that was putting the American companies out of business. Right. So there were companies like Trump was talking about in his State of the Union show in Georgia that had been a great steel producer, but were reduced to 2 hours a week. 2 hours a week is all they could run the plant because there just was no market. They could not compete with the dumped Chinese steel. Trump put the tariff on the Chinese steel, and guess what? The Georgia plant became competitive again, and within a very short amount of time was running 2 shifts, 6 days a week, making money hand over fist, exactly what you want to have happen. All those steel workers and all the other businesses, fast food, hotels, repair shops, all the other businesses that serve the workers of that steel plant all came back up and are running. That's what we want to see. That's what these tariffs can do. In 2025, China even posted a record $1.2 trillion trade surplus. Remember, it used to be $800 billion. That's what Trump was complaining about back in his first term. Now it's $1.2 trillion. After redirecting exports to alternative markets despite U.S. tariffs. So, because we didn't have tariffs against Canada, we didn't have tariffs against Brazil, and China would send their product to those countries and then import them into this country. Anyway, against the backdrop, the Supreme Court's ruling further weakens Trump's negotiating position, but we shall see. We shall see. Now, matters are complicated because now we talk about oil. And the oil that China buys, most of it discounted comes from Venezuela and comes from Iran. Well, China's discounted source in Venezuela got cut off. Mm-hmm. And this week, 5 days ago, China's supply out of Iran got cut off. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that the senators and congressmen who are owned by China tried to block these tariffs, like Thomas Massey, backed the court's decision and even joined Democrats in protest during the State of the Union show. These defected GOP lawmakers reflected broader public frustration with the economy. Although inflation has slowed since the summer of 2022, tariffs further exacerbated financial pressures and have worried a growing number of Republicans who would prefer a stronger focus on affordability for their constituents. They don't seem to understand economics at all. Just because you lower the price of one commodity, it gets so low that no one works. The company goes out of business. And then all the car dealerships that supply those workers with vehicles, all the home builders, all the landscapers, all the bankers, everybody that deals with the payroll generated and commerce generated by that steel plant suffers. That's what the tariff does. The tariff allows those companies to come back and come alive. It's not all about the price of the steel. Threatening additional economic confrontation with China would reinforce the imperial presidency Trump has been projecting, which could further divide the Republican Party rather than unite it. It remains to be seen. I'm talking it up because I believe that it will unify the country. The tariffs will play out. The amount of money that the country is making off the tariffs is going to offset income tax, which is going to please everybody except those people that don't pay federal tax, which is a lot of people. About 44% of the country pay no federal tax at all. So they don't give a shit one way or the other. All they want is cheap steel. And there's a possibility that this China strategy could backfire, but I don't think so. Trump controls all the energy cards. He controls Venezuela, he controls Iran, and that means he controls China. And Trump today had to do it. Trump today said that our Navy is going to guarantee safe passage of all commerce in the Straits of Hormuz. What do they have to be afraid of? Iran's Navy's at the bottom of the sea. They can't shoot anybody. Iran's not going to get in the way. Well, that's not who stopped the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz. No. It was the insurance companies and the British-controlled insurance companies that said, we're not insuring these boats. And no captain is going to take a boat that size with that amount of cargo through the Straits of Hormuz without insurance. So all shipping stopped. And China was on the block, baby. They're going to go dry. They only have about 100 days of strategic energy reserve. 100 days. That's it. So Trump stepped up and said, I will provide the insurance. Don't you worry about a thing. Our vessels will be there and we will protect whatever vessels want to haul oil through the Straits of Hormuz. Now we're talking about 90% of the oil that's purchased by China is now suddenly insured by Donald Trump. Yes. So Donald Trump is now in control of the oil supply to China. And as long as China behaves, as long as China doesn't do anything against Taiwan or anything retaliatory too bad against the tariffs, the oil will flow, right? That's the great fall of China. China is going to lose its control over its own destiny. That doesn't mean Donald Trump's going to squeeze them or put his boot on their neck or drive the people crazy. Remember, there's 900 million Chinese to worry about. And it's going to be gracious. And it's going to be I think, peaceful. That is the great fall of China. China is no longer going to be after trying to conquer the world so they can have more space and more land for their people. It's going to work. It's going to work. I think it's a brilliant plan. Yes, Laurel Flower, the liberty was, I'm afraid, real. It was real. And the napalm that the Israelis dropped on liberty was the final straw for me. The final straw for me. I was not happy with that. I do not trust Israel. I do not trust Israel. When I was building electric trucks, they had a program called, I'm trying to remember the name of their energy program, their electric vehicle program in Israel. But it was a smart idea, but they were trying to do replaceable batteries, and I was trying to get them to try my electric trucks there. So I had to go to Atlanta, and I had to meet with AIPAC. I had to meet with the America-Israel Political Action Committee and make a deal to get my electric trucks into Israel. And the issue was that they only wanted 2 trucks, just 2. They didn't want to make an order. They didn't want us to build them and ship them. They wanted 2 trucks. And I saw right away what they were trying to do. They were going to take my 2 trucks. They were going to rip them apart, reverse engineer them, and go into production of electric trucks. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. You place an order for 2,000 trucks, we'll talk. 2 trucks, not going to happen. And so I canceled the deal, and we never sold into Israel. Sometimes I got spider senses about this stuff. Anyway, in Venezuela, Trump has stopped the discounted flow of oil to China and Cuba. Cuba would sell to China, so it is really one and the same. In Iran, Trump is moving to control all the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz. All of China's oil flow would be safeguarded and thus controlled by the U.S. Navy. All of this should send all of China's hopes of starting a war with the USA into the dark. Pretty smart, huh? Pretty smart. This is America Free Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew. I've been your host for the last 2 hours. I have so appreciated you being here and all the people in the chat room. Thanks so much. And we had Plant 22 and Pool Dude over there and representing in Foxhole. And we appreciate you more than you know. Remember, we're live every Wednesday and every Sunday right here on America Free Radio. So please, all right, wow, I'm just trying to get that to stay. Okay. Please tell your friends about us. That's how we grow. You don't have to like, you don't have to share. I don't care about the algorithms. We're never going to beat them anyway. But you can follow me on the social media if you want. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. I will send you the link to tonight's program, a small write-up, and a bunch of links to goodies that we had for sale, and you'll be able to get them for yourself. This is Brooks Agnew with America Free Radio saying peace, Earth Explorers. Now go and do great things. Look for the good in people and help it to grow a little bit every day, and before long, you will have saved the planet. Peace, Earth Explorers.
Thank you for listening to Revolution